The various dishes of food-themed Pokemon are wonderful. Would you like some literal ice cream? Or how about some leek or an apple pie? Or if you're feeling really game, a giant salt golem. So I feel like introducing some more food-themed mons into OSTARA, combined with some more fairy types, is a good way to talk about some Aussie staples. This isn't stuff like full-on traditional food or anything though, this is like the stereotypical stuff, like 1 degree less than chucking a shrimp on the barbie. I've never got that, we don't even call them shrimp here. Anyway, let's get started with a new Pokemon, an ooey gooey sort of lad. Vegemite is kinda nasty. I get why a lot of people who try Vegemite are turned away from it in other countries. Weird brewer's yeast mixed with a bunch of other stuff to create a black goop pile to shove on your sandwiches. Thanks, Grandma. But for a Pokemon, I wanted to have a more esoteric idea for it. The first stage, Moltmite, plays off the happy little Vegemites, and it literally is just a pile of the stuff, with an almost baby look to it. There's no real design inspo apart from that. This Pokemon would probably show up around the towns in-game, kind of a tiny little Pokemon lad that's hard to see. Maybe it could even be a special Pokemon like Gimmighoul where you'd have to catch multiple or find multiple Vegemite globs to form it together to make its evolution. The black and yellow color scheme is great for this one, and really is just the right theme for Vegemite. Moltmite, the yeast Pokemon, a fairy type. Moltmite was found after some brewing yeast combined with other elements and became sentient. Since then, a single Moltmite can create multiple others when in contact with similar types of yeast. They're small and quite the handful, causing mayhem and mischief wherever they go, becoming a tide of mischievous Moltmite if left to their own devices. Because of this, Ostarans use poison types to help keep the population in check. Moltmite secretes a sticky goo from their pores that have become quite a delicious sensation in the Ostara region. Moltmite have the abilities Klutz and Limber. When it evolves, I wanted to play up aspects of Vegemite's cultural aspect, mainly the fact that it, well, was at some point a cheaper spread for sandwiches, but also the egg in Vegemite Soldiers, which is like essentially just Vegemite on toast strips where you dip into the egg. Again, not really my jam, but I'm sure someone out there likes it. So this is kind of the goop refined. It stands to attention like a soldier, and even wears a cap from what I'd say is the Ostaran equivalent of Vegemite on its head. Its body would definitely goop and drip around as if made of a thick sludge, but would probably be edible much to the worry of our Vegemate. I decided for typing to give it the poison typing next to the fairy type, as to me, too much Vegemite just tastes foul, more so than usual, and I mean, its ingredients aren't the most appetizing anyway, and I like the idea of, despite it being a poison typing, still being edible and quite the kind Pokemon in moderation. Vegemate, the yeast Pokemon, are fairy and poison type. When a Moltmite has enough yeast in their body, they evolve into Vegemate. They are much kinder than their pre-evolution and are known to help people with creating the special spread that seeps from their body. They're quite dutiful and will protect anything they deem worthy, and will even spring traps by hiding under their helmet till the target is in range and stuck by a gooey trap that Vegemate set. As Vegemate move about, globules of their body fall off and turn into Moltmite, which if Vegemate notices, it will begin to care for and try and teach it better ways. The ones it doesn't notice become wild. Vegemate have the ability Sticky Hold and Limber. Next, let's explore an Ostaran regional form. So Pavlova is an Australian Christmas staple, and I have to essentially explain the design choice now because the first form for this Pokemon doesn't change too much, apart from its appearance, so let's meet Ostaran Milcery. This form is based more on meringue. It's not so gloopy in this form, being a hardened and crusty form that has a more debonair personality to boot. I feel like Milcery is cute, but doesn't have much in the way of a personality. And neither does Alchemy when I think about it, but I gave this one sort of a suave nature because when I think of Pavlova, despite me always hearing it in my head being said by a bogan, it feels very fancy, even though I can pop on down the Woolies and buy one for $10. It's a simple design, but says what it needs to say, and what it needs to say is, "Look at me, I'm crusty." Milcery, a Staran form, the cream Pokemon, a fairy type. Unlike their Galarian form, the Milcery of Ostara are a hard, crunchy Pokemon that spends much of their days helping others with their beautiful sweet smells. The formation of this Milcery form is said to have occurred due to the relatively different temperature and food quality in OSTARA. Their bodies are a little hardier, but they lack certain aggressive qualities. Milcery hang around places where fruit grow and love to eat nothing more than large quantities of them. Milcery evolving have been attributed to them having feasts of these fruits. This form of Milcery has the ability Aroma Veil. There's something funny about making humanoid mons. Alchemy is like the little angry sister compared to Pavlovely. This is sort of like a combo of maybe a race day outfit, along with some very fancy Christmas wear or something. What I'm trying to say is this Pokemon is fancy, okay? Probably would have a bunch of forms with different fruit combos on their hat and colours, but I'ma just stick to this one for now so I don't spend the next 18 years doing just this one Pokemon. Pavlovely keeps the energy of alchemy, but gives it a massive fancy hat adorned with very Pavlova fruit, some kiwi and strawberry, and some raspberry for those fancy flared shoulders. Then it goes down into a very puffy Pavlova dress, and creamy hair. As I'd attribute it most being sort of Lilligant feeling with its animations. Grass Fairy too, as the only other typing I felt might be appropriate was Psychic, but Grass fits with its fruit assortment most. Pavlovely, the Pavlova Pokemon, a fairy and grass type. Pavlovely is a pyramid of various different types of sensations. Large fruits grow upon their head that provide wonderful benefits to heal their allies and stop disease. Their body is covered in a crust-like skin that flakes off and is said to be delicious to Pokemon, and attracts bird-type Pokemon to Pavlovely in droves. Tipping their arms and their long dress is a sticky sweet goo-like substance that spreads a large radius around Pavlovely in a sickly sweet scent. It can increase the power of this scent to cause dizziness, hallucinations and worse, but usually it likes the company and won't resort to that. Pavlovely has a new ability called Tropical Treats, where upon entering the battle, ally Pokemon are healed. The effect of Tropical Treats changes depending on the berry that's being held by Pavlovely. You know what the best Australian food is? It's a simple combo of hundreds of thousands, some butter, and bread, all just smushed together and crammed into my mouth. So I wanted to make a sort of silly fairy bread Pokemon, one that would be this random encounter during the game. It'd move really fast despite not having an amazing speed stat. It just knows how to run. I started with just a slice of bread and cut it in half and added some eyes and done. I wanted it to have an almost Ogerpon look to it, having some funny little wing-like arms, and make it look almost like a manta ray. I wanted to tackle the sprinkles in a way that would look like its chest is covered in it without being such a super busy design. So I decided it'd sort of be an array of blurry coloured bits, and the head would have a funky sprinkle mohawk. And with its tiny little legs and feet, it almost looks like Sprinkle could just fly away, but he can't run. Not from me, as I'm huggy. Springkin, the fairy bred Pokemon, a fairy and ground type. A rare and elusive Pokemon who runs at the sight of humans is Springkin, which is found in the most remote regions of the OSTARA region. Springkin creates a strange crystalline form of sugar that takes the form of giant sugary cylinders that can be eaten as a delicious treat, but is sold for an incredibly expensive amount by hunters of the rare Pokemon. Its soft, spongy body surrounding the crystalline formation helps it survive great falls in mountainous regions. It even keeps it warm in colder climates, which helps solidifies its place anywhere in the OSTARA region. Springkin have the ability Sweet Veil and Thick Fat. So now it's time for a Convergent Mon. It could have been a regional form, but the name gave me a smile, so I went with Convergent for it. And what is the Convergent, you ask? Well, that's the yeast of your worries. If I'd go out and get some dough instead, man, that sucked. Never mind, it's Fido. I'm out of here. So this Convergent form is actually based on an Australian form of bread that doesn't use yeast, known as damper bread. Usually it's more water and flour with some extra bits thrown in, so this Fido is a little more chunky, moist and wet, unlike normal dough. Damper dough is a bit more of a bluish-white tint as well. This Fido looks a bit more like an Australian bulldog in a way, and its evolution follows suit. Firedamp, the damper dog Pokemon, a fairy and water type. This Pokemon resembles the Pokemon Fido. It retains a lot more water than Fido, and thus is moist and squishy to the touch. Most people find the feeling of this form wildly uncomfortable. It produces no yeast, so its use for cooking is none, but it is hardy and has found a niche as a Pokemon to help explorers in OSTARA that go to the farthest and deepest reaches of the region. When fire damp is exposed to large amounts of heat, its body starts to harden on the outside while still retaining the water inside that it has. This just increases the mass and durability of the Pokemon. Fire damp's ability is water compaction. As it evolves into Dampenard, it doesn't change a massive amount, but instead becomes baked, filling out and becoming a bit crustier and honestly looking a bit more tastier. Much more bulldog in this form with the underbite and overly grumpy look. It keeps the water fairy type, as I thought that keeping it still represented the idea of damper breath the most, and yes, I know it isn't a Saint Bernard, but the name works so well, I loved it too much. I don't know if this Pokemon would be the best, but it makes a great lapdog mon to give old Granbull a run for its money. This breaks the two Pokemon convergent tradition of keeping a similar look for the evolution as the non-convergent species, but I'm a rule breaker and you can't stop me. Dampenard, the Damper Pokemon, a fairy and water type. Upon evolution, Dampenard's entire outer body hardens and becomes a crusty, yet sweet smelling shell, though within still stays incredibly moist and sticky, which makes it surprisingly hardy and a great rescue Pokemon. Many people find love in Dampenard as a household pet, due to it being a wonderful smelling and loyal Pokemon, despite it having a bit of a lazy streak and lapdog energy. Dampenard seems to love hunting Raswell and Beachum on the beaches of OSTARA, where their natural resistance to water is abused against the water rat Pokemon, who are nothing but a chew toy to Dampenard. Dampenard have the ability Water Compaction. Believe it or not, but I actually have one more Foodmon to show, but that is coming up in a different video along the way. For now, let's wrap up with our delicious boys. Grab yourself a slice of fairy bread and damper with Vegemite on it, and finish with a pavlova. Bam, a full course meal. And for a balanced diet, like this video and sub to the channel as you're all growing humans and need your nutrients and entertainment to watch while you eat. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.